And what's fascinating is almost all ancient cultures preserved their foods or made their foods edible via the process of fermentation. So fermentation of foods have been practiced actually for past recorded history. There's evidence that the Egyptians were fermenting foods 10,000 years ago, really around the beginning of agriculture. One of the reasons we think that fermentation happened was, number one, there was no storage system. There wasn't refrigeration. There was no way to actually keep food fresh. And in the process of just storing food, fermentation was a natural process that would start regardless of what you expected to do. What's interesting is many cultures actively used fermentation to make their food probably far more edible. And interestingly enough, as many of you know, fermentation in general breaks down lectins. Believe it or not, a lot of bacteria love to eat lectins. They think they are delicious, and they will eat the lectins, for instance, in quinoa. Fun fact, the Incas always fermented quinoa before they ate it. They let it rot, and then they cooked it. Now, unfortunately, that's not on the package directions. Immemorial, beans were always soaked for a considerable period of time. And most people, if they bother to look, notice that if you soak your beans, foam will appear on the top of the water. And that foam is actually the carbon dioxide produced by the native bacteria on beans fermenting the bean. And so traditionally, beans were diminished in their lectin content because they were soaked for a considerable period of time. And onward and onward. So not only does fermentation really reduce lectins, but fermentation gives you postbiotics. And it's the miracle of these postbiotics that I've mentioned in my last two books, but now in Gut Check, which will be out in January, you really get to see how important these postbiotics that have occurred from fermentation really are.